We're going to do a little bit of mapping notes as we start up the last part of our introduction unit. This is mapping. If I ask you to draw the world as I have it shown in this slide here, it would be a little bit more of a difficult exercise because it's spread all over. 70% is covered by water, 30% by land. But would make it easier for you to draw this, and I'm going to ask you to draw this a little bit later on, but to make it a little bit easier, it would help to be able to put lines around it and a grid to divide it in two. Now I have the world, if you will, divided into a northern and a southern portion, so it becomes a little bit easier to draw so we know what part belongs to which hemisphere. So if I add another line, vertical line, dividing it the other way around, again, it becomes a little bit easier to be able to see that North America, South America, and Europe, and so on, fit in certain areas of it. So the division of a grid line helps to be able to do the drawing. Now, I'm not asking you yet to draw this, but as we proceed to divide up the world into quarters now, I got a 2x4 grid, makes it a lot easier to be able to get the particular continent in its place. So let me start by naming the continents, which you're supposed to be familiar with: South America, North America, Europe, Asia, Africa, and Australia. Last one is Antarctica. So you need to know the names of the continents. That's pretty easy. But to actually draw it in your Cornell note papers, it takes a little bit more effort in a way that you have to divide it into a 4x8 grid. So now it becomes easy. So what I'd like you to do in your Cornell note papers, the title of it is Mapping, and then you're drawing a big box, half a page perhaps, and you're dividing up, use a ruler if you can. This would be a 4x8 grid, and then you're going to be drawing the Earth, a map of the Earth based on this grid. Remember that like these three are blank right here, then South America would fit in these two, a little bit in this one, a little bit of Central America, Mexico would fit in there, etc. So do a good job at drawing this and labeling the continents for me. Please pause the video so you can get this thing done. The idea is to get a sketch as close as possible to this in your own paper. Okay, next is following that exercise is, why is it easier to copy when you build a grid? Well, because it simply provides orderly reference points. Makes it a lot easier as you chunk the world, if you will, into sections. So it's much easier to be able to draw it. Also, an example of that organization. How do you find an address like 1601 Longhorn, which is our school address in Vista? There's the address. How does the post office deliver to these particular address? Well, we're organized by zip code, right? So orderly reference points are by zip code. So that allows basically to deliver mail any particular place within Vista, for example, by zip code. So you get the idea. No notes taken on this, not necessary. Just the map that you have in your notes. Additional type of information. How do you find a web resource? See, the organization that's required to be able to find a web resource on the internet. You use a URL. URL stands for Uniform Resource Locator. I would suggest you write this down just as a reference if you don't know it. URL is a Uniform Resource Locator, and it consists of a protocol identifier first, like HTTP or FTP, then followed by an IP address or domain name. You can have a specific address, numbers, followed with dots in between, or the domain name, like examples would be the http:// is always sometimes pronounced as whack, www.whitehouse.gov, and so on. You get the idea. So everything is organized in terms of particular protocol to be followed, a uniform resource locator. Now, please write this down. Very simple points. Mapping is finding a point of reference. To find a point of reference requires certain things. First of all, it requires organization, like we saw: a grid, a zip code, a URL. In addition to that, it requires a common language, how we're going to refer to it. Okay, in this case, in a grid would be latitude, longitude. And then lastly is an international agreement, where everybody is in concert as to what all of this means. Anyway, write these down and we're basically finished. Thank you very much.